So ẹ káàbọ̀, welcome to another episode of Voices of IWA. My name is Iya Omisegun and I'm your host. If this is your first time joining us, Voices of IWA is a podcast that's specifically for women of the diaspora who are practicing African traditions. So this is a very, very special episode because I have some of my two favorite sisters that are here. This season, we are actually looking at the role of women in African traditions. And so if you looked at the last episode, we had Oloye Elebuiban, Iya Oyelola, who was here with us. And she said a couple of things that was very interesting to me because she was really hitting on some of the points of why we are doing this podcast and why we think that it's really important. So she was talking about the fact that women are so important in the traditions because we are the mothers. She said something to the fact that like we are the mothers, the daughters, the wives, the sisters, and we hold up the entire world. And I was like, wow, like she had no idea that, we hadn't talked about the fact that we would be really looking at some of those roles that we play in community and also some of those roles that we play within family and within the tradition. So today's role that we're going to talk about is actually mother, right? So the name of we named this podcast, this episode, Mother is Gold, right? There's a proverb, an African proverb, a Yoruba proverb that says, Iya niwura, right? His mother is gold. And the other part of that is that father is glass or father is mirror, which is interesting. But today we're going to talk about the importance of mothers, the importance of motherhood, and some of the things that are related to motherhood that come up for us as women, especially women in tradition. So I would love for you all to introduce yourselves, tell us a little bit about yourself, and also tell us, like, one of the things that we do on the podcast is kind of talk about how you got into the traditions. So share your narrative on how you got into practicing African tradition.
Okay.
Whoever wants to go first, gonna break the ice.
You want to go?
Let's get in there.
No, okay. Okay, greetings and love, everyone. I am Makeda Kemit, Ifa Doyi, Ifa Kemi. So I am a mother of 5, wife. I'm 45, and I am artistic director of a youth performing arts Shakere dance and drum ensemble.
Beautiful.
Called Egun Omode, which is Children of the Ancestors, loosely translated in Yoruba, loosely, right? And so that takes up a lot of time, those things. And so I came into the tradition through birth.
Wow.
Through birth. So I grew up in a culturally centered home. I went to African People's Action School growing up. And so my mother was just already enthralled in it. So I was just born into this. But officially made a choice and a conscious and intentional decision to study for myself at about 17. Because I just wanted to take my destiny in my own hands, so to speak. I had just been, in and around it all the time, and growing up in and around that kind of environment. I'm sure you totally understand what I'm saying, Dzifa, that it is just the air you breathe, right? And you don't really understand that it's the air you breathe until you leave it, right? And so when I left African People's Action School at about 5th grade and went into the public school and all of that, it was like
big difference.
I felt like I was an alien, like seriously. But luckily, and I'm so grateful to the teachers that I had who prepared me to be able to navigate that space. I was so culturally rooted in myself. I was so sure of who I was that they equipped me. My mother and my father and my teachers equipped me so beautifully to be able to navigate any space that I occupied. And so whatever adversity, the racism, of course, was there. I mean, I went from an all Black African-centered institution to literally being the only Black girl in my entire class. And so that I could write a book. People be telling me, like, you need to write something about that. And so, but through all of this, consistently dancing, training a West African dance and drum, consistently going over to the continent and studying, and just ensuring that there's some intergenerational transmission going on. In terms of my children, I met my husband in 2000, I would say 4. I'm going to say 4. 4, okay?
We'll hold you to it.
Right. We married in 2006. And we've been married for 18 years. My husband, Iya Kemit, and we also ran a school together. We did that. We did that for about 13 years together. We ran a culturally centered school in Trenton, New Jersey for about 13 years. It was from pre-K all the way up to high school. And so all of our children have been educated in this way. Our youngest 2 are the last of the Mohicans. And so we have a 15 and a 17-year-old who are still being homeschooled. But our other children are in college, CAU, Ayanfe is getting ready to go to Morehouse. So that's it so far. That's what I can think of. I'm just very grateful. Thank you for having me and inviting me today. I appreciate it.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
I'll start with thank you. Yes, thank you for having me. Who am I? Never a good question to ask me. So I am Dzifa. Dzifa Richards is my name. Folks just call me Dzifa. I am a mother of 3. I have a set of twins. It came first, which I feel like I need to emphasize. That's a different shift. When you have a 1 and then you go to a 2. But I'm a mother of 3. I am by education, I am a physician assistant, specialized mostly in pediatrics. I did start out in internal medicine, but most of my years have been spent in pediatrics. I am a doula, birth doula primarily. I do a little bit of postpartum work, but primarily birth doula. I am, I guess, a birth worker in general, a womb worker in general, womb coach. What else am I? I help to run a rites of passage, adolescent rites of passage process here in Atlanta. I am the daughter, the only child of
the one and only
a person that has made me me. I think that's pretty much it, right? That's all of me. How did I get to this thing that we do, this tradition thing? I was born to my mother.
Right.
That is how I got here.
You didn't say her name yet. You go on and say her name. Let people know who she is.
We're here.
Okay, no problem.
Collectively together. Me.
Okay.
So as you, right, born into it. And when you're born into it, I think like anything, it is a part of, well, let me not say that. We'll talk about that as we go. But in the way in which I was brought up, it was not something that I turned away from. And so it's only thing I know how to do. So that's why I'm still here.
So, this is interesting because, real moment, right? I forgot until just this moment that you both were born into this. Like, right, which puts a different spin on everything, right? Because you've been looking at the traditions over time, right? And how they've changed from the time you were a little girl growing up in, the freedom schools, right? And to where you are now, still choosing, because there's some people who grew up in those environments are like, I ain't touching this with a 2-foot pole. I'm good, right?
Yes.
Where you both are like, no, this is my way of life. And, this is important to me. So it just dawned on me like, oh, heck, like both of them actually, have grown up in this thing and have, may have a whole different perspective, which is what is really beautiful, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like being able to share each other's perspectives. So let's just jump into it, right? Let's jump into this conversation around mother and motherhood and the role of motherhood. Like, what do you all see as the role of mothers in communities, specifically like in African traditions, in our traditions? What have you seen in your vast experience of like the importance of mothers?
I went first last time.
And I knew you were going to say that.
I went
It's
first
okay.
last
I've got an answer.
Okay.
So actually, it's funny because I was separately having a thought when you asked this question that I can still tie in. So one of the things that I think is also ironic or cute about this dynamic here is that our paths actually join, like from earlier than now.
Okay.
Right. So, but I don't mean that like, we
I
rock
didn't know
strong.
that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Come on down.
So-
Get into it.
Teach me something new.
And the reason why I'm saying that is not like we rolled as children, right? But we were intertwined in the same spaces,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
So there was a community in Trenton and community in New York. There's a community in DC. There's community in Chicago, like all of those things, right? So this is going to tie into the thing about mothers.
Yeah.
But there's a mother that I think about, right, that we share together, Mama Makini.
Yes.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Yes.
So she was a very vibrant and important person in Trenton, right? Because of the work that she did, she connected into work that my mom did. There was a camp that lots of us went to across the community, state interconnected situation.
Come on.
Heritage Village and camp, whoop, whoop, right? That we've all experienced at some space in time. And so while Makeda is younger than me, we crossed paths, right? But the Mama Makini factor, which is how I even got there, because she's one of those people when you ask the question about the role of mothers, I see her face, right? So when I think of how and why I can still be here, I think it is also because there were multiples of hers.
Yeah.
There's really only one her, but there are multiple of her. You know what I mean? And so the same thing I think is what we're also doing. So what I see when you ask me what I think about mothers, I don't even know if it's necessarily related to the spiritual aspect of what we are. And maybe it does. But for me, I know that my children have duplicates of me.
Yeah.
So I kind of,
I think I'm safely on that list.
I think you're safely on that list. I think both of you absolutely call me baby mama, actually.
And then the facts,
children.
right.
Yes. I call her baby mama, right?
But for me, that's what I see.
Yeah.
That's what I think about immediately.
Yeah.
I like that. That was a great answer.
A community of mamas.
Look
Yeah.
at you. That's great. I mean, it's beautiful to have that perspective that I'm going to think I'm going to chomp on that. I really am. I actually asked my daughters this question. And I said to them, my youngest two, I said, well, give me 3 things that come to your mind immediately when I say mother to you. Like, don't think about it too hard, because I got that Akanke. She will like think it through too much, you know? But they all agreed on nurturing. They both agreed on nurturing. They said understanding, helpful. They use these words, confident. They use like these really positive words and adjectives. And I was like, oh, okay. All right. Okay. So it seems like they have a grasp of things, you know? And I think that we are really the backbone of all the things, you know? We're really the backbone of all the things. And so as a mom, it is important to have other mamas in the community, like a Mama Makini, and versions and different aspects of a mama like that. My own mother, my father also. And I know this is about mothers and motherhood, but I also want to throw in there that masculine energy is also important.
Absolutely.
And that masculine energy allows us to I would say positive masculine energy, right?
Mhm.
Just allows us to be who we're supposed to be, you know? I think that if we are in a balanced space, it allows us to be the nurturers. It allows us to be who we are sacredly to be. Like I seen a proverb, I think it's from Malawi.
Mhm.
The proverb say, the mother is God number 2.
Mm.
Did y'all hear that?
I've read something similar.
I said, what? You know,
Yeah.
no pressure, right?
Right.
No pressure. But that it feels that encompassing
Yeah, for sure.
to be a mother, you know, and what all of that comes along with being a mom. You are, when your children see you and look up to you, it's almost godlike, goddess-like, you know?
And I don't know, you say almost, but I'm like, for sure, right? You are for, in the beginning, I mean, I don't think I've ever said this directly, but, you know, I'm a mother of 2 and I've helped to raise a lot, including another 4, you know, from my current husband. And like when they are younger, right? Like if you're nursing, like you are their food source, right? Like everything that you feel from the time they are in your womb, right? Like they feel too, right? You know, like, so my whole sense of being changed the moment, you know, I don't even think it was before I knew that I was pregnant. Like I felt something in me shift. I'm like, what's going on with me? And then later to find out like, oh, I'm having a baby. And my whole world shifted. Meanwhile, you know, I don't think that his world shifted until the baby came, right? Like when the baby is here, right?
Yeah.
But my world was shifting for a whole 9 months, right? And the children looking up to you, and you know, I do feel that, like, yes, like we are their first understanding of the Creator, you know, our first understanding of God.
Facts.
Absolutely.
So I mean, I'm that's another question I have for you all. Like, how have you all brought your children, like, especially so you all are carrying these traditions with you your whole life. How did you then introduce that into the life of your children? Like, what was that experience like? She went first. Next time, y'all gonna flip flop.
Okay.
Rock, paper, scissors, stroke. Right.
Okay, so my Oluo, my first Oluo, Baba Obalumi Ogunse, Baba Turun, he's an ancestor now, said to me and to us that the most important thing that you can give a child is their name. And when he like put it all out on the table, I say, you know what, that makes all the sense in the world. So I think that's the first introduction to the world, and your child is the name that you give them.
Yeah.
You know, that sets the tone really for the rest of their life. So that is how we initially introduced our children to the tradition, through their names.
Okay.
And so we were preparing their names before they even got here. And so when they were named, we did the whole Esantaye. All of our children got a reading when they were born. And it was a roadmap for us. It still is a roadmap for us to know the energy and the destiny and the purpose of this child that you're bringing into the world. So if you have a child that is more musically inclined, if you have a child that is more, I guess, mathematically inclined, if you have a child, we have all these in our family.
Right.
And so I don't really know what we would do without this roadmap, right? And traditionally, that is what is supposed to happen, right? And not only your family is to know this, but the community is supposed to know, so that the community is not just responsible for their own child, but for the community children. And so if you see that a child, you know, in your community, you know, okay, this child is supposed to be doing this. Let me help. Look, I got a guitar. You know what I'm saying? This child is supposed to be a musician. So, oh, let's take our child over here. Or this child is supposed to be a dancer. Let's, you know, so it is, the community just buys into it. And so once we got our children's Esantaye, I would say, that's like the starting gun, which really allowed us to be able to parent our children. I have a child, Kanke. They told me she's going to be the shrine worker. And so it allowed me to say, okay, if I knew this is child, okay, I'm going to make sure that I pay attention to the shrine work that she's doing so that she will be, it's not that my other children don't greet shrines or anything like that. But traditionally, this is what is supposed to happen with our people and our children. And so I would say that's my first answer, is the child's name, and Esentai is how we bring our children into the tradition.
Mm-hmm. Which is interesting because I didn't, again, you all having this information from the time you were small, right? I didn't come into the traditions until I was in my late 20s, right? I'd already had the children. And, but soon after, when I got my hand of Ifa, and then when I got my hand of Ifa, and then when I got initiated, is when I was like, you know what? I want to make sure that I bring them along with me. Like, they have to be a part of this entire process. So they got their hand of Ifa at the same time that I got initiated to Ifa.
Okay.
And like you said, like, they were very young when that happened, right? I think they were 4 and 2. So it wasn't, I didn't have it as a Sentaye, but
Sentaye, right.
But I still had the roadmap, if you will.
Yeah.
Right. Because like one of them had to be initiated, like Soraya had to be initiated by the time she was, a teenager. They were like, put your foot on Suli's neck or he's going to be, a different type of child, and I was like, my little boy. But, like as he started progressing, I was like, this is what you were talking about.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So it's so important to be able to know like who our children are, right?
Facts.
What about you? Again, just born into it. Iya Omisegun.
Say the question again.
So the question was, what has it been like? Like, how did you introduce your children into the traditions?
Okay.
Like, what was that?
So I wanted you to ask it again so I could really, really hear it.
Mm-hmm.
And while I think my answer could also be her answer, I think that one of the things about the tradition, right, which kind of goes back to that comment you said about people who may have been raised, but then are like, I don't want any of that.
Yeah.
It's literally how you live.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think sometimes, and I understand the why, like when you're finding it like mid-road, right? It's this thing that you're taking on.
Mm-hmm. This very new thing, right?
Right. But it's also something that is separate from the fabric of your life.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to decide like, okay, am I going to take you, like you took your kids along with you because you made the choice, right? But it's like if you're in your house and you decide we're no longer going to drink Tropicana orange juice, you don't buy it anymore. It's now the new language of the house. There's nobody drinking Tropicana orange juice because it's not available, right? Mm-hmm. So I think for me, I'm glad she went first because I wouldn't have been able to answer the question because in my mind, there's only language that I speak.
I got you.
But I think that even for you, that was now going to be the only language that you spoke. So you took your children along with you. You know what I mean? Like when you look at it as just the air that you breathe, I don't know how to speak to my children in any other way but that, right? So for instance, with my twins, when they were born, and, we had to go to the NICU every day, right? I only knew to talk to Obatala about my child because I knew that he was born before his eyebrows had come in, before his ears had curved in. Like I knew all of his organs were still trying to really be molded. And so who do you need for that? Oh, okay. It's like, what do you need to put a nail in? You need a hammer? Let me get the hammer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I absolutely know what you mean. And I think there's a lot of people that still don't make that connection, right? Because there are so many people, especially now, it feels like our traditions are becoming like a little like faddish, right? Like it's it's the new, like you walking down the street and people be like, you Ifa? And I'd be like, actually, no, you know what I mean? I'm not, but I know where you're going with that. Let me help you. which on one hand, I'm super excited about. I'm super excited about the fact that our traditions are getting more exposure and that people are understanding that there's more to life than Christianity and, you know, in Islam. Not that those are bad, right? But my point is that there's other things, right? There was something that we were doing before. Like even when Iya was on the last episode, like hearing her speak about colonization, right? And how colonization, like it screwed up the whole world. Right? Like the whole world.
Yes.
You know, and so everyone is still dealing with this. So us that are on this side, that are in the diaspora, that are making a conscious effort to reach back, right? It's exciting to see other people, you know, like wanting to reach back. But I realize that people also just see this as a religion, right? Like we know to say our culture, our traditions, right? And there are a host of people that just see this as a religion, right? And so it's like I'm trying on this new pair of pants and I'm not sure if I want my children to be a part of that, right? Which kind of, you know, it does blow my mind because the moment I realized that, okay, wait, this is the life I'm living now, right? So that means that y'all have to live this life too. And at 2 and 4, they didn't have a choice. Like, this is what you were going to do.
Yeah.
And now I see how it's become ingrained in them, right? This is all they know. You know, they don't know anything else. But there's so many people that don't.
But you have to live it, because if you don't live it, you leave room for your child to be the child that says, that ain't working for me, right? Because if you're truly living it, then it's like, one, is everything that you breathe, but it also feels good and feels right on them. Yeah. There won't be those moments for them to be like, I don't like that, because somewhere in there you must not be doing it right. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I know.
Right. So so I think when you go back to the question about the mother, and being that mini godlike microcosm, right? That sample,
goddess energy in their
like,
life. It's
you
okay,
have to like, the world, the universe spins a certain way, right? And so we all move on that planet in that way. So if you, as that center of their world, circle in your way and live in that way, there's only but one way they can live.
Yeah.
I do, though. You mentioned colonialism, right? And just how the effects of it, we all know that it does make us in a way have to be intentional about what we're doing.
Yeah.
You know, it's one thing, yes, we live it, it's who it's like in the fabric of our spirit, you know? But because we're in America, you do have to be vigilant. You do have to be intentional, because we're not in Yoruba land. You can just go outside and just do the Ifa pots is everywhere. You know what I'm saying? It's not like that here, you know?
I'm remembering a story. Well, I remember in one of my children, I'm giving too much information. They did not want to allow their friends to come over.
Oh,
right?
okay.
Because the shrine was open. And, you know, I finally was like, well, why don't you invite your friends over? Like, you know, like the house is clean. Like, you know, they go to your room.
And she was like, room?
She was like, bro, nobody's going to understand this. She was like, nah, I'm going to just go to their house, Mom. It's okay. You know?
That's a thing.
Yeah.
That
was a whole thing.
Being intentional about the transmission of the culture is a thing. Like, yes, we live it, we breathe it, but we have to be intentional about saying, no, y'all come over here. You know, we're at events or we're in prayer. No, y'all come over here, you know, because it's just so easy for the children to get distracted. They got all kind of pads and pods and buds and all kinds of things, you know, that can distract them from what it is that is important, is that it's supposed to be at the center. No, so I teach my children intentionally how to pray.
Yeah.
We have conversation about prayer. You know, it's not just something that I think that my daughters are just going to pick up. We're not in Yoruba land. You know what I'm saying? We're not in Ghana. Right. So do you know how to pray? Okay, well, this is what you say. Do you know how to do this? Or this is what you say, right? So there is some level of ensuring that what we are practicing gets passed on, not just, you know, oh, well, they might get it. No, we're going to get it.
No, you absolutely have to be intentional. And it's interesting because, like, speaking to the having been born that way, that sounds funny, being born that way, but you know what I mean? I actually and I have this conversation sometimes with another sister of mine, is I can see how intentional and how much work our parents had to do to make us us. And I am not living up to their standards.
Don't say that.
No,
I wouldn't say that.
I don't think so. But I mean, we can argue about that later.
I get what you're saying,
but
though,
because they worked like
hard.
They worked hard. Like there was a fire and a warrior spirit that existed there that they could not sleep. And as a child of that, you want to be like, yo, when I get to be the adult, I just want to sleep sometimes. They never slept. I don't want. I would like to get a nap every now and then.
It was 24/7.
Right, it's 24/7. Yeah. But what it did was like the households where it wasn't 24/7, those are the people who grew up with me that aren't necessarily doing this. Yeah. Like they understand it, they know it exists, but it ain't necessarily like how they live and breathe. Yeah. Right? Because within their household, it wasn't. So you do absolutely have to be intentional. And for me, I think that, you know, it's one of the reasons why I say it's not just the thing you can wear is because it translates, and it definitely did like during the 70s, like it translated into how you ate, what you can wear. Yes. You know, like everybody else could wear this, we couldn't wear that. Right. Because it all is connected. It's a political, spiritual thing, all in one thing. I remember
my existence is political.
I remember as a mom pulling up to Publix one day and was like, I just want to go in and buy some Kool-Aid packets, girl, and some oodles and noodles. Why can't I just do that?
Because it was ingrained in everything.
Literally. Yes, like it's literally.
No Kool-Aid for you.
And they may sound like it's not connected, right? But it is.
But it
because
absolutely is.
The fiber, like everything in me would have been like, you know, like you can't.
Yeah.
So you mentioned your households a little bit. The households you grew up in. So how has your relationship with your mother, right? How has that shaped, you started to talk about it a little bit, like how has that shaped you, your own image and your own perspective of motherhood? Because like you grew up with Mama Marimba, you know what I mean? Like she is someone that I look up to as somebody who came like long before I met you, right? I was like, I remember meeting you for the first time and I was like, she is like African royalty. You know what I mean? Like I thought that.
That's why we should not be talking about that part of my life.
I absolutely did. I absolutely did. And then I saw her wedding and I was like, she is African royalty. You know what I mean? And then I met you and I was like, she's also like a total cool person. You know what I mean? And getting to know you better, but like how have their energy shaped you and your perspective of motherhood? Even in like y'all saying like they were warriors and they were fighters and like, you know, like I'm sure your childhood was also quite different. You know what I mean? Yes. You couldn't have Kool-Aid. Like, girl.
My mom was juicing beets and carrots and celery every morning with cod liver oil. You understand? That's what I had to do in the morning because we had to be strong warriors. Okay? So that affected me. I juice, now. Like my health, I'm very aware of my body and conscious of it. My mother was the vice principal of the African People's Action School for many years. Okay. So even after I left the institution in 5th grade, my mother was a teacher. She was a staple at the African People's Action School for many, many, many years. And so even though I graduated, even though I went to high school and all sort of stuff, I always came back because my mom was there, you know? My mom was the artistic director of the Children's Theater Company at the school. So I didn't really have a choice but to consistently be a part of the African People's Action School, even into adulthood. When I went to college, I came back every summer and worked at the African People's Action School. I helped to run their summer camps at the African People's Action School. And then when I had my child, when I had a co-son, my first daughter, I went back to the African People's Action School and began as a teacher's assistant at the African People's Action School. And my daughter was there. And then after a year or so, one of the teachers was getting ready to retire and they were like, oh, well, Makeda's here. And they began training me to become a teacher at the African People's Action School. So this is just one of the ways in which it was just consistent in my life. I just don't know anything other than the work, because that's just what it is. It is the work. It is a consistent, intentional. You get up every morning, every day, and you say, it's nation time. It's nation time. It's time for African Kazi order. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The unity circle. Yes. Okay. So this is how you wake up. They made sure that you look at the world with African eyes, with African glasses on. Okay, boom, you're going to be a photographer. How is the photography going to empower our people? You want to be a dancer? How is you moving your body going to help our community? Like, we had science projects. Sis, listen, Baba Hannibal, I freak. Baba Tyrone would judge my science projects. Do you understand?
Listen,
how powerful that might be.
That's a different
when you're in 5th and 6th grade. Okay, when you got Baba Hannibal questioning your whole situation, and you're 11. Okay. How is this going to help us? I'm like, okay, Baba, so you got to go down. Nice. Yes, you got to figure out, okay, what in Nguzo Saba principle are we going to talk about today? And how are we going to implement the Nguzo Saba Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday? Okay, so it is just what it is, you know? It really is just what it is. And so my mother and my father, and my uncles, they were all Black Panthers. Okay. And so my father got arrested. So he just passed 2 years ago. But he was the person who actually introduced my mother to the African People's Action School. Okay. So I got it on both sides. Okay, y'all. I don't know what else to do. You know?
And I think, like, I was listening to you talking, and I was thinking about the fact that somebody might be like, okay, so what about the tradition piece? But I think it's the answer is literally in, well, first of all, if you look historically, how we over here got here in this mass, right? It's a political conversation.
Absolutely.
Right? It does not mean that our people didn't hold on to tradition and culture when they came over, when they were brought over. You know, they did. We absolutely kept all of those things. When you study, like, you know, the South and hoodoo, as they call it, and all of that, that's absolutely us holding on to the tradition, right? But then we also merged it into what was given to us, Christianity, etc., right?
Yeah.
But really, in our story here, what brought us to a place where, like, our parents could fight for and stood that strongly was the politics of claiming who you were. So for us, it's not separate. And if you separate it, it's easy to then also leave it. Because then the next day when you decide, oh, the straightened hair looks good, you go for it, right? And I'm sure if my daughter watches this, she's going to laugh right now because we were having a conversation about this recently. But, like, it's part of that, right? But that ties into how you feel spiritually about yourself. And if you feel a certain way about yourself spiritually, no matter what language you use, your spirit work looks different.
Yes.
Right? And then it translates different to the people who watch you do it. So if you're feeling politically and culturally connected to what it is that you're standing on,
oh boy.
now how it comes out of you is different. And then your children are like, oh, well, even though Bobby and Sue and Jose or whatever their names aren't doing it, I'm totally okay with this because I see what it looks like.
So let's talk about that. And remember, I said that forget them questions that I wrote. Like, right. So I mean, full transparency, right? Got my little pretty questions here, and they don't mean shit no more because you done opened up something else. So you talked about, you know, something that you said made me think of another time where I was doing some work, and it was like, you know, my existence is political, right? Where I think that some of us, especially those of us that are practicing the tradition now and leading, right? It's almost like it feels like we leave politics to the side because it's like, I'm so spiritual and I'm so African that I don't want to be political, right? The two are separate. How do we get there? And then looking at where we are now, right? In the climate that we're in now and where the trajectory of where this shit is going now, you know, like how do we bring that back? Right? How do we bring that back? Because I think you all, I'm just putting this together now, those of you that have that experience, right, with that and that understanding that it's all political for us, right? And if you're not associating, if you don't see the correlation, then maybe you're missing something. There's so many of us that practice African traditions that refuse to vote.
That's true.
Like, huh? Right? Like it's just a refusal to vote. Like how do we bring back that correlation between, like you said, like that it has to be the same because this is who we are, right? It's our spirituality and our politics and our existence. It's not separate.
It's not separate. No. Me and Bai were actually having this conversation a couple of days ago with people, y'all know my husband, you know who he is, okay? Who it was talking about.
The people may not know. Tell them, girl. Tell them.
So my husband's Iya Kemit. He's a Babalawo. He's an Olokun priest, father to our beautiful children, and very vocal. Very vocal, I'll say that. But the notion of leading with your spirituality, some people like I watch and I'm like, what is that? Is that a thing? And people, you know what I'm talking about. They come in with all of the things, and I don't want to be judgmental here at all, but
it's a safe space.
Okay,
it's cool.
But it is. You walk into a space with all of it, right? And there isn't this notion of separating yourself in spaces. No, I am this, I am this, I am this, I am this, all at the same time. And so we're able to tap into, I think the way that we're rooted is that we've been trained, so to speak, to tap into all aspects of ourselves whenever we need it. And the spirit part of it is also a part of it. It's not the part of it.
No, I totally listen. There was a point in time because again, I had a time of maybe like an identity crisis. I don't know. It might not have been a crisis, but definitely a time period where I had to really choose. Like, wait a minute. Like, I'm just Omi every day. I was talking to the gentleman that runs the studio, and he was like, I think I saw you sent me an email and it said Tiffany, and I was like, yeah, that's my name too. I was like, my daddy don't even call me that anymore. So I was like, it is my government name though, right? But where I made a choice where I know it didn't matter to me. Like there used to be a time where I wanted to hide it, right? Where I was like, because I didn't grow up in it, right? And I come from the Caribbean also, where the Obia woman is a thing. Like the Obia woman and the goatfoot woman and the woman that gonna put a curse on you and all that. That shit is real.
It's real,
right?
Yeah.
So being, we talk about that in the VI, like when we're there, about that stigma that is associated with our traditions also. And there was a period of time where I definitely was like, oh, I'm Tiffany over here, and that was a time where I was Onawumi, and I'm Onawumi over here, and there's all these separations, right? And after initiation, and after really again making a decision that no, this is just my lifestyle, right? This is not a religion. Because I think there was a total period of time where I was like, well, this is, like, it's like Christianity. It's like me, I'm moving from First African, and now I'm a Yoruba priestess, And it was like, no, right. Like, this is a lifestyle. This is a whole cultural shift. This is a paradigm shift. Right. And you have to take this wherever you go. There's a gap in between there. And again, you all being born into it,
born
right?
This way.
Born this way, right? You've been born that way. There's definitely an advantage. And now I see it with my children because, again, they don't know nothing else. This is what they know.
That's right.
Right. But for those of us where that wasn't, like, coming from Catholicism and then moving, like trying to figure out who God was and what God looked like all through college, having no real understanding, right? Getting married. And my first husband, that's actually how I met Dzifa, because he was like, we're going to practice, African traditions. We're African.
Yes.
And I was like, Jesus is my Lord and Savior. Really? Hallelujah.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Right? And I was like, he's trying to make me the Obia woman,
Okay.
There was this that was real for me, so if I think there could be for people, like, there's a gap in there that needs to be filled.
I agree. I agree. I think that what I've seen is it's not necessarily a bad thing at all, though, that when people step into the tradition, they're so like excited about it.
Yeah.
And it's really great. They have that experience that you are speaking to. But it is a balance that has to be had. And going back to mothering, there's a balance that needs to be, I mean, you just have to balance your life in all aspects, but being rooted a certain way does help. It's extra credit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you're, you know, as the nurturer, as that person who like literally is like the universe for that baby, for that toddler, right? Your day-to-day language is what they're taking in. So if you think about it, even, you know, on the continent, like think about how much time that baby, that toddler spends with mom or whatever, whoever the community mother is at that time, right?
Yeah.
And they're being consistent in doing whatever the thing is, whether it's making o'shea or doing whatever they're doing, you know, whatever they're doing, right? Or making whatever. It could even be the daily stuff, or just in their conversation.
Yeah,
the spirit comes out in any proverb that they happen to speak about a thing, or they're bathing the baby, right? They're bathing the baby in certain concoctions of herbs intentionally. There's things that they're saying to baby, even in Ghana, and Zinga was talking about, you know, when they bathed her baby, right? There's herbs that they're using. There's a method in which they're saying whatever they're saying. There's a whole thing that's happening in that
ritual
process. That's a part of just living.
Yeah.
But because spirit is a part of living, it's being done, right? So when the mom is constantly doing those things, it's being embedded into. So it's the daily habits that have to happen, the brushing of the teeth, the washing of the face, the going to get water, the doing the whatever. But in the way that you're doing it, your language is being spoken in how you go get the water.
It's true.
I remember vividly, okay, making ancestor plates growing up, right? Little side story. I liked pancakes when I was growing up. So when the ancestors got pancakes, Dzifa got a little extra pancakes.
Of course, yes.
Because you don't just throw away the plate. You just have to be like, let me get a little bit of that. So we ate it together.
Right,
but my point
you were
for you
sharing
was this,
with the
right?
ancestors.
That was not something that could not happen in my household.
Right.
Right. We had these red, black, and green vases. And there were these 3 different libations. Do you remember Mother by Mothers, Father by Fathers, to render mercy, to bear witness?
That one I don't know.
Okay. It was in, it was 2 of them. It was in, I think it's in Malefia Sante's book. One of them. Anyway, it was something that we said every morning, right? But we had to pour from the red one into the black one, pour from the green one into the black one. And then there was a final thing you said on the black one, right? But that was every morning.
How old were you? It
was my entire life.
Okay, life.
Right?
Okay.
Over by the ancestor altar with all the things and all the mass and all the whatevers, right? So literally what's happening, like I'm seeing pictures of my ancestors, right? I'm seeing, there was a Aquaba doll up there. There was a Chihuahua doll up there, right? Which has lots of actual, like, I can go on and on about that. Actually, now in my life, it's actually very coincidental. But anyway, that's there, right? Then there's red, black, and green as our political colors, right? And that's literally a part of life. Like life doesn't start, dinner is not had,
right,
until those things happen consistently. And even in the language, like my mom is telling me, go talk to mommy. That's her mother, right? My mother's mother passed 6 weeks before I was born.
Wow.
I don't know a life without her in it because the conversation was always as if she was a continuity of what we had going on. So there was no other option.
Yep.
Man, that's so, it's exciting because that's so not growing up that way, you know what I mean? Versus knowing you both, you know, and being around you both, being around your children, you know, our children play together, you know what I mean? Like it's heartwarming to hear that, you know, you all had that also just growing up. Like knowing the difference.
And our children have it too. Like, do you have, all of our sons hang out. So if y'all know, all of our sons hang out. And I hear them on the phone sometimes.
Yeah.
Do you hear how they greet each other and get off the phone?
I'm never around them on the phone.
Oh my gosh, it's so beautiful. They be like Black Power. They be like, who said that? I don't know. Like they be like, I'm my brother. I'm like, okay, you know, they talk about old dude. Do you know that our sons talk about old dude together?
Yeah.
Like they talk to each other, like, and it is a breath of fresh air. Like they feel good around each other. You know, they could be themselves around each other. You know, it's such a beautiful thing because everybody doesn't have that. When our sons go away to college, they're in the enemy territory. You know what I mean? And so, me and my husband understood this. One of the tools that we use for mothering and parenting our children is that for the first, because we live in America, this just is real. Imagery, language is important. What it is that our children saw, I knew how it impacted me. Like one of the protocols that we had in African City School, APAS and the Garvey School, we didn't allow any imagery that didn't reflect us into the school.
Wow.
Like no Superman, it wasn't no Batman, it wasn't no Superman, it wasn't none of those white characters. Because when you come into this institution, it is about us. It's about cultivating who we are as a people. And so we didn't really allow our children to even watch television if they didn't look like us for like the first 5 or 6 years of their life. And so we have to be this intentional here in America. You can't just kind of just let it go and think that they're just going to absorb it in because we live here in America. You have the vases. You got to have the red, black, and green stuff. You have to be intentional about, come on in here. Let's talk about how our family works. Because we're behind enemy lines here in America. It's just what it is. And so once our children reached the age when they began to ask questions like, why can't we watch, I don't know,
Superman, Mom?
We can then begin to have the dialogue. We did not have we refused to allow any other images to come into their life until they were able to have conversation about it. Because you don't know what kind of impression that is really leaving on your child if they can't communicate it. Of course, you can see certain things, but once they were able to have certain conversations about who we were and to really understand it, we didn't let them see anybody but us. And it was profound. It's a profound thing to do. We've seen students at the Garvey School who have come from Catholic school backgrounds come into our institutions, little girls.
That was me.
Okay, right. Little Black girls, 6, 7 years old, saying that she doesn't want to be Black. She doesn't want to she wants to be a white girl because of what she's constantly seeing. And so coming into absorbing this little Black girl into our family, and her parents being really diligent about the imagery and how they speak to the child within about 6 months, it's a totally different child. Wow. Totally different child. Wearing the lapa now, wanting to wear her hair naturally, embracing herself. And so this nurturing has to be intentional over here. We have to be intentional about it.
Absolutely.
I think it's intentional anywhere though, right? Like I think that the very first thing when you get pregnant, right? And your body shifts over that first trimester, that requires of you to be a warrior to go through that process.
Absolutely.
They do.
No matter what that journey looks like.
And birth?
I ain't got there yet. That's my whole point, right? So from the time, and we can go back, right? Because to have a cycle and go through what that cycle is, even if it's not painful, right? The shift in what's like your being, right? The psychological conversation that you have to have with yourself, even if you're taught to love it, right? It is still okay, this is shifting my day. My next 7 days, my next 5 days look like this. Why? Because I'm taking in this. What am I dealing with? I'm dealing with this thing that, that is this expression of whatever. There is something that a warrior has to have, right? That you have to go through that experience. Every war is not about like battle. It's not about violence, right? But there's a space of patience and courage and humility, just so many things that go with being a warrior, right? That you have to have. You have it when you first get pregnant. You absolutely have to have it to give birth, right? So for me, when I think about like the intention is the fact that as a warrior, right? As a mother figure, because there are sometimes people who haven't given birth who are absolutely mothers.
Absolutely.
Right?
We're going to talk about that.
That you are very clear on what war you're fighting.
Yeah.
Or what agenda you're pushing, right? So you are intentional. If you think about it, I want my child to have a long, healthy life. Well, I'm going to make sure that my strategy in this particular war is they won't be eating McDonald's ever if I can help it.
Right.
Right? I remember my children didn't even recognize the golden arches.
Right.
Until they were like, I don't know, like double digits. And it was because they had been going with other people. Right. But then within our space, our car never pulled into there.
Right.
It wasn't even a concept. It didn't exist as a concept for them. Right. So you are being to the intentionality. And even like I say, like the reason why I say anywhere here or there is because intentionally over there, you have to intentionally be doing the things.
Yeah.
Well, I'm speaking to, yes, being intentional when you're self-aware.
Yes.
I think it's easy to be intentional when you're self-aware. I'm speaking to those of us who are not self-aware and who actually do just fly by the seat of their pants in life, you know? There are people who are not guided in a way and who are not intentional about the way in which they pass things on, don't even know to pass things on.
Right. That part. That part.
Right.
And those people are also here, right? They're being exposed to the traditions, right?
Right.
So now I'm, like, oh, this cool African tradition I have access to, right? I'm wearing elekes. I was at the nail shop the other day, and this lady, unbeknownst to me, right? Like I was just minding my business, and she was like, "Alafia," and this is what I'm talking about. This was like, because if I would have never thought, right? No part of me would have ever thought, and this is where I'd be like, this is my own judgmental stuff that I have to get out of my mind because I was like. I'm in, where was I? I'm over there by Greenbrier Mall, and she was like, who's your head? You know what I mean? We're having this whole, and this sister was super dope, right? Like really had a lot of information, but was teetering, right? Teetering on the edge of really embracing the tradition. She knew some things, right? She could talk about Oshun, she could talk about Oyashi. She had information, but I was asking her about like her lifestyle and how she lived, right? And I was telling her about the podcast, and I was like, hey, this is for women that practice the tradition. She was like, oh, I don't know if I practice.
See?
Right? And I was like, well, why not? You know what I mean? And she was like, well, I'm interested. So I think this is what it is. I think people are starting to become interested because they realize that there's something more. Right? We're starting to realize that the old stuff ain't really working. And I want something different. I need something different, but I don't really know where to go. And there's some fear there, right? Because like if I put I put my big toe in to the pool and just see how it feels, but I don't know if I'm ready to immerse my whole body.
Right.
You know what I mean? What's going to happen to me when I do that? So, okay, y'all, we're at the hour.
Okay.
So I didn't say this. I meant to say this in the beginning. So I knew that this particular episode would take a little bit longer. So we're going to wrap part 1 up, and then we're going to come back for part 2, because in part 2 of Mother is Gold, we're going to talk about some of the things that are not so pleasant about motherhood, right? And some of the ways in which society has kind of shaped motherhood, right? Or shaped how we have to practice motherhood because we live the way in which we live, even those of us that are practicing the tradition, right? The balance that we have to strike. However, the way we normally end is we end with a prayer. So who would like to, I pray all the time, y'all. So whoever goes this time, the other person gonna go the next time. So you can, right? Yeah, I said that so she could be fully aware.
See,
right? See, I know my sister. I am my sister's keeper. Right?
Ashe. I quit. I'll pray.
Can't do it.
I love a good prayer.
Yes. Pray for the mothers.
In the name of the Most High, Olodumare, the divine energies of the universe, the Orisha, our ancestors, all those energies that we call powerful. We give thanks, and praise for another blessed and beautiful time together.
Ashe.
I pray that we can stay rooted in gratitude.
Ashe.
I pray that we can stay rooted in love.
Ashe.
And that with each step that we take, be it a step towards our destinies. Ashe.
Ashe. Ashe. Ashe. Well, thank you for joining us. for this episode of Mother is Gold. Please like, comment, and share on this episode. And we'll be back for part 2 in just a little while. Go Dabo.
Oh.